Tony Khan. He is a billionaire wrestling fan who dared to challenge WWE. He is the man who promised to bring back the sport's lost magic. When he started All Elite Wrestling, he wasn't just starting a company. He was leading a revolution. At least that's what we were told, and fans rallied behind him, supporting his vision. And it worked. Kinda. You see, when AEW got going in 2019, it was the hottest thing in all of wrestling. Everyone wanted to be a part of the company. Chris Jericho, Jon Moxley, Cody Rhodes, Kenny Omega, CM Punk, Bryan Danielson, you name it. If they weren't in WWE, they were on AEW. But somewhere along the way, the magic AEW once had faded away, and there is only one man to blame for it: Tony Khan. His booking blunders and erratic behavior led to the fans turning on him and eventually turning on AEW. This is not the AEW story. We've already covered that in multiple videos. Go check him out. This is about the man behind it. This is the Tony Khan story. How did the man who built AEW from the ground up go from being the most beloved underdog in wrestling to its most polarizing promoter? Sit back and enjoy the ride that Sportskeeda is going to take you on through the highs and lows and the controversy that changed everything for Tony Khan. Anthony Rafiq Khan was born on October 10th, 1982, into a world where sports and business were deeply intertwined. His father, Shahid Khan, a Pakistani-American billionaire, is the owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars in the NFL and Fulham FC in English football, while his mother, Ann Carlson Khan, has been a strong presence in the family's business. Growing up in an environment where sports franchise management was a part of daily life, Tony was naturally exposed to the industry from an early age. This upbringing played a crucial role in shaping his passion for sports, eventually leading him to carve his own path in the world of professional wrestling. From an early age, he loved professional wrestling. He shared in an interview that his obsession with wrestling began when he was 8 years old. He was a huge Sergeant Slaughter fan who hosted and voiced a character in G.I. Joe. When Tony discovered he was also a wrestler, he became curious. Around the same time, he also watched the A-Team and saw Hulk Hogan alongside Mr. T. His love for G.I. Joe and the A-Team led him to wrestling, and before long, he was completely obsessed. Looking at his background, he must have known that he would start a wrestling company. During an interview with the 5-Star Podcast, AEW president and CEO Tony Khan discussed his childhood dreams of becoming a wrestling promoter. He said, quote, "When I was growing up, before I went to University of Illinois, actually before I went to University of Illinois Laboratory High School even, being a wrestling promoter was something I'd thought about and dreamed of. I started writing a show called Wednesday Night Dynamite, and it's on every Wednesday now. We built it up and it became a real thing." He also stated it was always his dream to become a wrestling promoter. All he needed was a roadmap to get there. Then he met the former president of TNT and TBS, Kevin Riley, in 2018, and he asked if there was ever a chance that wrestling could find a place on either network in the modern era, like when WCW aired on both channels in the 1990s. Khan was told there was a possibility, and he set his plan into motion. In an interview with Comic Book, Tony said, quote, "There was a big opening and opportunity for somebody to launch a wrestling promotion if it was done the right way, at the right time, with all the necessary resources that we had. I just needed to find a TV partner, and in Kevin, I found a potential TV partner. It took me another year after that to actually get a deal on paper, but Kevin was interested. We had a lot of meetings about it, and I had opened a door that I would never close." End quote. In the meantime, independent wrestling was going through a revolution. Wrestling fans were increasingly getting frustrated by Vince McMahon's booking decisions in WWE and felt that he was booking the shows just for himself. Some deserving superstars were not getting the opportunities in the company. Because of this, many fans turned to smaller wrestling promotions like Ring of Honor and even New Japan Pro Wrestling, which was booming at the time. The Elite were gaining a lot of momentum at the time. Kenny Omega's feud with Okada had become one of the best rivalries in wrestling. Also, former WWE stars like Cody Rhodes and Chris Jericho were also wrestling in New Japan Pro Wrestling and even in the Indies. Tony Khan was closely following all of this, and then the turning point came that changed everything for the wrestling industry. But before this, we need to go back a year before in 2017. Wrestling Observer Radio's Dave Meltzer was asked if Ring of Honor could ever sell 10,000 plus tickets for an event. Meltzer responded, "Not anytime soon." Cody Rhodes, who was a part of the Elite at the time, responded by saying, quote, "I'll take that bet, Dave. I already gave them their biggest buy rate, put the Bucks and I on the card, and 3 months to promote," end quote. And 1 year later in 2018, we got All In. This was the turning point we were talking about. Held on September 1st, 2018 at the Sears Center Arena, All In featured talent from New Japan Pro Wrestling, Ring of Honor, Impact Wrestling, AAA, MLW, and the NWA, and got an attendance of 11,263. It was the first non-WWE WCW US wrestling event to sell 10,000 tickets since 1993. Tony Khan was already meeting with the Elite at the time, discussing the possibility of a wrestling promotion. However, things weren't going to be this easy. Nick Jackson of the Young Bucks was not interested in talking to him. Matt, on the other hand, did have some conversation, but he was skeptic when Tony talked about starting a wrestling promotion. It wasn't until Matt learned about Tony's father, Shahid Khan, and his financial backing that he began to take the idea seriously. Matt then talked to Cody Rhodes about this, and the ball started rolling. Tony couldn't talk to Kenny Omega at the time as he was contracted with New Japan Pro Wrestling, but he did meet with Chris Jericho, one of the biggest unsigned stars outside of WWE. Jericho was intrigued by Tony's vision and received an offer. Before committing, he consulted Vince McMahon, who ultimately advised him to take the deal. Soon, Kenny joined in too. Tony also signed young indie wrestlers like Hangman Adam Page, MJF, and Dr. Britt Baker to start things off. On November 5th, 2018, several trademarks related to AEW were filed in Jacksonville, Florida, hinting at the promotion's launch. These included names like AEW, Double or Nothing, and Tuesday Night Dynamite. In January 2019, AEW was officially established, with the Elite playing a crucial role in its creation. Recognizing their contributions, Tony appointed Matt and Nick Jackson, Cody Rhodes, and Kenny Omega as executive vice presidents. He named the promotion All Elite Wrestling as a nod to the Elite. However, according to Tony, his father Shahid Khan did not know that a new pro wrestling company would see so much success. He said, quote, "My dad expected it to fail, but I convinced him to take a leap. He gave me the money because he said I'd inherit it anyways, so I might as well blow it now," end quote. But things were turning out pretty good for Tony. On May 15th, 2019, AEW and Warner Media revealed a partnership for a weekly primetime show to air live on TNT, the same network that had previously broadcasted WCW's Monday Night Nitro during the Monday Night War. There was a lot of hype around the company as it was the first time since WCW that a wrestling company got this much backing. CBS Sports described AEW as the first company with major financial backing to take a swing at beginning to compete with WWE on a major level in nearly 2 decades. Also, AEW is paying a lucrative amount of money to the wrestlers. WWE was also referring to AEW here and there, which goes to show that they were acknowledging their presence. On May 25th, 2019, AEW produced their first ever pay-per-view, Double or Nothing, which saw the debut of Jon Moxley, aka Dean Ambrose, in All Elite Wrestling. He walked in from the crowd after the main event match between Chris Jericho and Kenny Omega and proceeded to attack Omega. Mox had just left WWE due to creative differences. He wanted to rediscover himself as a wrestler, and he realized that in WWE, he couldn't fully explore or express his true wrestling potential. AEW, which was still new at the time, needed a franchise player to help establish its identity. While stars like Chris Jericho, Kenny Omega, and Cody Rhodes were already part of the roster, the company needed someone who could truly shift the focus and take the spotlight. Jon Moxley, coming off his WWE departure, became that key figure. At the next pay-per-view at All Out in August, Chris Jericho became the first ever AEW World Champion. This was the right choice as Jericho was the most famous name on the roster. With him being the campeon, it brought legitimacy to the title, and Chris played his heel character to perfection. Finally, on October 2nd, 2019, AEW launched its weekly TV show, Dynamite, a show Tony Khan had been dreaming about since his childhood. The show kicked off strong, establishing key characters in Jericho, Cody, Kenny, Bucks, Hangman, MJF, Moxley, and many more. We also crowned the first ever AEW Women's Champion in Rio. Things were now in full motion for AEW. The next month, they produced Full Gear, which featured one of the most brutal matches in the company's history in Jon Moxley and Kenny Omega. AEW shows were a lot different from WWE. They introduced a ranking system similar to MMA, and the top-ranked wrestler would get the title shot. It was a clever decision and felt like something new in a wrestling company. Tony was getting a lot of help from the elite in booking the shows, and it worked. Kenny Omega was overseeing the women's division, Young Bucks were involved in the tag team division, while Cody Rhodes played a major role in creative direction, particularly in developing storylines, rivalries, and character arcs. But Khan took full control over creative in the beginning of 2020, with the EVPs contributing in other ways. For the next few years, AEW became bigger and better and welcomed more indie wrestlers like Eddie Kingston, Ricky Starks, Brian Cage, and many more, and also brought former WWE stars like Miro, Brody Lee, Andrade, and Malachi Black. AEW's roster became even more diverse and talent-rich, further solidifying the company's position as an alternative to WWE. As AEW continued to gain traction, Tony Khan began appearing more on TV, initially in backstage segments. By this time, the fans' perception of Tony Khan was that of a billionaire with a genuine passion for professional wrestling, someone who not only had the financial backing to support AEW, but also the love for the industry. Fans felt connected to him as they saw him as one of their own. The fans' feeling towards Tony Khan grew even stronger when he produced a memorial show on Dynamite in 2020 after the tragic passing of Brody Lee. It was one of the most emotional shows in wrestling ever. 2021 was the biggest year in AEW. They brought some of the biggest names in wrestling like Bryan Danielson and CM Punk. This was a huge deal. CM Punk, who had walked away from wrestling in WWE in 2014, walked back in the industry. AEW provided the perfect stage for his long-awaited comeback, reigniting excitement among fans and proving that the promotion was now a true powerhouse in the wrestling world. Tony wanted to sign Punk a long time ago. He met with the best in the world in 2018, but Punk didn't want to come back at the time. According to Tony, he said, quote, "He wanted to follow us and see how it went, but he was interested," end quote. However, he remained in touch with him, and Khan believed that Punk was a huge fan of AEW, saying, "Man, CM Punk watches Dynamite. He's into the show and he likes a lot of our wrestlers. It gave me a lot of hope that he would want to come to AEW and join us." Finally, Punk made his AEW debut in August 2021 to a thunderous ovation. Tony Khan treated his wrestlers like friends rather than talents. He openly hugged them and made them feel valued and appreciated. Now, there's nothing wrong in that, but being the boss of a wrestling company, acting like a fan felt uncharacteristic. He also started getting some criticism for being a weak boss who could take strong decisions. But up until this point, things were going pretty smooth in AEW. Cut to 2022 and things were still going good in the company. CM Punk was having one of the best rivalries in the company history with MJF. Hangman Page had just won the AEW World Championship, and Bryan Danielson and Jon Moxley had started a faction called BCC, with William Regal being their manager. In the meantime, Tony bought Ring of Honor. Yeah, the very promotion that played a key role in All In 2018, the event that ultimately led to AEW's creation, now became a sister company to AEW. However, a major thing happened at the start of 2022. Cody Rhodes, who was an integral part of All Elite Wrestling, decided to leave the company. This came out as a shock. Nobody could believe that one of the EVPs could walk out from the company just like that. Some AEW loyal fans even labeled him as a traitor for leaving. Also, backstage things were not going as it seemed on TV. So Tony moved Colt Cabana, who had some legal issues with CM Punk, from TV, and many speculated that Punk had used his influence to push Cabana out. Hangman Page, who was the AEW champion at the time, was feuding with Punk and thought it would be a good idea to bring this issue to TV. He delivered an unscripted promo subtly implying that CM Punk was responsible for Colt Cabana's removal from AEW. While he didn't directly accuse Punk, the message was clear enough to steer controversy. Punk went to Tony and talked about the issue and asked him to handle the situation, but nothing happened. This led to the all-out media scrum. Yeah, the infamous brawl out. We all know what happened. An exhausted CM Punk, who had just won the AEW World Championship, sat beside Tony and went off on Hangman Page. He even criticized the Elite for spreading rumors that he got Colt Cabana fired. All of this happened while Tony Khan sat there looking confused and couldn't comprehend what was going on. As Punk went to the back, the Elite, Young Bucks and Kenny Omega had a brawl. Meanwhile, Tony Khan, completely unaware of the chaos unfolding behind the scenes, was still conducting the media scrum. It was Chris Jericho who eventually informed him about the situation, leaving Khan stunned. Finally, Tony took some strong action and suspended everyone, including Punk and the Elite. However, what raised eyebrows was his decision to make them sign a non-disclosure agreement. Many saw this as an unnecessary move, as there was no real reason to enforce such a legal measure. This only fueled speculation and controversy surrounding the entire incident. The criticisms for Khan were now even stronger, with many saying he couldn't handle the pressure of being the boss. In the meantime, the controversy surrounding AEW kept coming. Backstage altercations with Sammy Guevara and Eddie Kingston, Sammy Guevara and Andrade, and Britt Baker's situation with Thunder Rosa. AEW was constantly making headlines, but for the wrong reasons. Every new report coming from the company seemed to involve some sort of backstage drama. On the other hand, MJF was making issues for Tony. He believed that he should be paid more for his contributions, and because of this, he no-showed a fan meet, sparking rumors about his unhappiness with AEW. Reports later suggested that MJF and Khan had a private meeting where MJF seemingly got what he wanted. However, he cut an amazing promo on Khan on Dynamite, calling him an effing mark. Yeah, they actually had him say that. In 2023, Punk returned. This time, though, Tony completely separated him from the Elite, starting a brand new show, Collision. This show was designed for Punk. However, the best in the world didn't like the idea. He wanted to have a TV program with the Elite, but that never happened. Tony didn't even address the situation. Then we had the All In at Wembley Stadium in London, the sequel to the Brawl a year prior, but now we had the Brawl in where Punk had a physical altercation with Jack Perry and ended up choking him out. This happened just before his match against Samoa Joe. After the incident, he turned to Tony and told him, "You're a clown, I quit." Following this, Khan fired CM Punk from the company. In just 2 years, AEW lost two of the biggest stars in Cody Rhodes and CM Punk. This is when fans really started to turn on AEW. Up until this point, everybody knew who Tony Khan was. As the time went on, his presence on social media grew increasingly erratic. His outbursts became more frequent, with many of his posts targeting WWE rather than focusing on AEW. Khan often felt the need to justify his decisions publicly, and in doing so, frequently criticized WWE. A prime example of this came when he was criticized for booking Hook in an AEW World Championship match. Instead of addressing the criticism directly, Khan lashed out at WWE, comparing Hook's booking to WWE's decision to put Jinder Mahal in a World Heavyweight Championship match against Seth Rollins. Rather than drawing attention to AEW, his comments ended up shifting the focus back to WWE, inadvertently giving them more attention than AEW. Also, his booking decisions started to feel more and more nonsensical. Some of the decisions he made early on were no more in use. Remember we talked about the ranking system? Yeah, that didn't work out, as giving the title shots based on rankings was not possible. Long-term storytelling became a thing of the past in AEW, because instead, Khan began booking shows on a week-to-week basis, lacking any real continuity or overarching narratives. In 2024, Tony Khan got physically involved in AEW for the first time when Jack Perry and the New Elite attacked him in the ring. Even his father Shahid Khan made an appearance that night. It seemed like Tony was stepping into a bigger on-screen role, but nothing substantial came from it. He sold the injury, appearing occasionally in a neck brace, but there was no long-term storyline. This angle had the potential to be something significant for AEW, as it was the first time Tony was physically assaulted on TV, but for some reason, the company chose not to pursue it further. MJF and Adam Cole's Devil storyline was one of the best things on TV in 2023, but Tony Khan completely derailed it after both Cole and Max were sidelined with injuries. Instead of finding a compelling way to keep the intrigue alive, the storyline fizzled out, ending in disappointing and underwhelming fashion. Meanwhile, several notable talents like Miro, Keith Lee, Malachi Black, and Ricky Starks were mysteriously absent from TV, while lesser-known names as Bandito, the Beast Mortos, and Hologram were given more screen time. This shift left fans frustrated, as many of AEW's biggest stars seem to be overlooked in favor of unestablished acts. According to Khan, he has a very specific audience in mind when putting together his shows. He said, quote, "I book wrestling for the sickos because that's what I am, and that's who I care about," end quote. He referred to the loyal AEW fans who will watch the shows no matter what. AEW's TV ratings have hit an all-time low. When AEW first launched, it dominated WWE's NXT in the ratings every week. But now the tables have turned, as NXT is consistently outperforming AEW. The biggest concern is fans just don't seem as interested in AEW anymore. In recent years, Tony has also been criticized for withholding wrestlers who don't want to be there. We have the recent example of Rey Fenix, who wanted to go to WWE after his contract expired, but Tony added more days in his contract due to the injuries he suffered in the company. Many have started comparing Tony Khan to Vince McMahon. Of course, both of them have very different personalities, but they have a similar approach in their booking. Vince McMahon famously ran WWE with an iron fist, and he was booking for the audience of one, which was himself. Similarly, Tony Khan has total control over AEW's creative direction, and he books for himself as well. He pushed the wrestlers he likes, not the fans, just like McMahon. Tony has been a wrestling fan at heart who wanted to start a wrestling company from ground zero, and he succeeded in his goal. Yes, he had the financial backing, but he also had the guts to follow his heart, and that truly sets him apart. Dismissing his achievements would be unfair, as there's no denying that he has left a lasting impact on the wrestling industry. That said, running a company comes with its challenges, and Tony could benefit from the expertise of seasoned professionals in the business. Right now, things may not be going his way, but tough times don't last forever. With the right adjustments, he can turn things around.